There's a tremendous amount of psychological pressure that we all have been enduring as these necessary changes and transformations have been taking place. And through Aquarius, a lot of it has to do with the open question of where is my place in society? What meaning do I give to the collective, to society? What role do I play in society? With Pluto completing its transit through Capricorn, it left us at that rhetorical question, and it left us to figure out that riddle on our own. And Gemini Uranus is where we've had some assistance with examining that riddle from perspectives that maybe we have not considered otherwise in other timelines. And through the Capricorn ideal of ourself, we were trained to assume that our identity had something to do with the name tag that we got at work. You go to college, you get a degree, or you associate with certain individuals and you climb the corporate ladder. You have this status among people for what you do as occupation. Everything evolved around our work or occupation, the status that we have in what we do in the 9 to 5 or career and those Capricorn aspects of our reality. That story's over. And the more we attach to it, the more we attempt to identify through those things, the more we are going to suffer. Suffer is manifest through attachment. Scorpio, which is the algorithm of Pluto, it hosts that experience that we have of attachment. Scorpio is where we find ourselves in crisis with the time continuum. That is, unlike its polarity, Taurus, it struggles to find a sense of presence. And presence is what we're struggling to find in society, Aquarius, aligned with meaning. So, through Scorpio, we cling to the past and we grieve. Through Scorpio, we exercise unnecessary and even obsessive power in order to prevent what we fear. But we overlook the present. In the Holy Quran, in the ayah or chapter and surah, uh, the surah or chapter called Al-Baqarah, the cow, which is the second chapter, and ayah 38 or the 38th degree, Allah says, this is after the incident that took place in the heavens between Adam, Eve, and Iblis. Iblis, known as Lucifer or the Luciferic impulse, which actually is Venus. They were descended to the earth. And in this ayah, Allah says, He instructs humanity that after descending to the earth, guidance will be sent to them, and saying, descend all of you, which is Adam and Eve and Iblis, or the principle of Venus. And then he goes on to say, then whoever will follow my guidance need have no fear, nor shall they grieve. Okay? From time to time will come from me to you guidance, and whoever shall follow it, on them shall be no grief, nor shall they fear. Okay? This is a promise of regeneration and preservation through the womb of Scorpio. And to follow to the algorithm of that statement, on them shall be no grief, past tense, time continuum, nor shall they fear, future tense, time continuum. And that goes back to Scorpio, which is the regenerative of the identity of Adam and Eve, that is the humanity that aligns with the expression of the image and likeness of Allah, okay, which came down with Gnosis or Venus, okay, into the earth to express humanity as enlightened beings. Understand that. So this is part of the crisis that we have ongoing with past and the future. Okay, we're concerned about where we're coming from and what no longer uh, holds meaning and what no longer is part of how we source power. And we're concerned about the future and that fear that presents itself, which was an exercise through Pisces, Saturn transit, and how we will recover or restore that power in a sense of empowerment that we are looking for in the present. Understand? So, along this crisis, there was a lot we had to figure out since May when Pluto stationed retrograde and now going direct. We will find ourselves reconnected to a sense of empowerment. And were it not for the introspect that we had during the retrograde phase, in which we had to walk without a sense of power, okay, it still was productive. It was part of how we now will arrive at that sense of empowerment, and it will serve to stabilize our psychology once again as that gets restored through this transit. So, as you listen, I want you to consider yourself, of course, okay? And I really encourage everybody have these discussions, please, with your loved ones, with your family members, okay? With all the people who you care about. You know what I'm saying? Take notes, study, and see how you can apply everything that you hear to your life. If you have questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and put that in the comment section. I will be happy to help you to the best of my ability. If it requires a little more time than, a natural, simplified reaction response, then you may need to schedule, with me for a session. So let's jog down. Pluto Direct 2025, empowered again. You heard? We have Pluto stationing direct October 13th. And Pluto, this is the satellite of our psychology, our psychological composition. It also determines the threshold of our psychological capacity and conditioning. The theme with Pluto is power. Your capacity or ability to affect your environment, and in retrograde, how your environment affects you. In introspect. During the retrograde motion, since May, we had time to reflect on where we were being psychologically tormented, disturbed, burdened, facing power struggles and imbalances. And through Pisces, we were able to go within the infrastructure of, or the reality of, our psychology in order to heal what was there through the opportunity of Saturn. Saturn, in direct motion in retrograde, was homing us in to where our authority is at, with the use of our consent or the failure to make use of our consent, and the beliefs that we were selecting and identifying with the ideals that we were identifying with, and how it led up to causation in our life. And once these ideals of the subconscious or imagination is affected by themes such as fear, shame, guilt, desire, it enters into our power dynamics. And that's where we can find it challenged by other powers. It's also where we may be disillusioned to find that there's a limitation to our power, and maybe we are mortal and not immortal. Finding the way to accept the glimpse of our mortality, the limitations that we have, and the limited capacity that we have to control certain circumstances, situations, or outcomes, and also admitting to ourselves what is in our control and finding the courage to actually do something about it. Power can be a very intimidating thing. When you are without power and when you have power, both sides can be intimidating. Because there is always consequence or effect with power. Where does accountability come in with that? Where does courage come in with that? If you should cause destruction, injury, offense, or oppression, injustice, betrayal, even if you didn't intend it, if the cause is there, would you have the courage and the transparency, the loyalty and consistency to come clean about it? Thus, taking accountability for how your power has entered into cause and effect with others. Do we also have the courage and transparency to admit when there is cause and effect upon the self from our own doings or dealings, or from the lack of accountability, boundaries, and consent that we are exercising or taking claim of in our life? And we sit there with tears, with regrets, resentment, or a spirit of vengeance set on fire. And one of the most painful realities is to come to the conclusion that it was all me. I was the offender. I was a cause. I was a creator of that experience, regardless of how disappointing or painful it was. The irony in that is where true power enters the body. When we have the humility to accept, admit, and align with what we find to be true. Even though it may hurt, even though it may be disturbing, overwhelming, humiliating, or carry a sense of belittling in us to do so. Something transforms in our spirit, something transforms in our psychology when we can work along these lines with our power. Pluto, transiting Aquarius, it has something to accomplish, as it always does in every sign and house. In Aquarius, Pluto wants to align the collective with a revolutionary code whose thresholds are out of bounds. To make sense of who we are from the outer bounds or the outer limits. To make sense of what is appropriate or inappropriate in the use of our power in the decentralized world, the decentralized reality. What are the rules? What are the limitations? What is right and wrong? What is good or bad? We don't know yet because we're in a new world, a new reality. That hasn't been the case since 1770s. Since that time, we've gotten used to a certain infrastructure that evolved in our world where we agreed to live within certain limitations, social constructs, rules, laws, obligations, duties, culture. And from generation to generation, we simply learn the construct, we comply or face consequences. Well, things are returning to an abstract circumstance, as it was when settlers first came here. It was abstract to them. It wasn't abstract to the indigenous who were here, but it was abstract to the settlers who were here. It became abstract to the indigenous who were here once the doctrine of discovery began to be imposed upon them. What do we do now that the lifestyle, the rules, the laws that we live by are now in contrast to these new people who arrived in this land? And the new people who arrived in this land could have the same question. What does it mean now that we are away from the throne? We are away from those social constructs that we once patterned our reality after. This led up to many modifications and adjustments in what would be agreed as rules, laws, codes, and policies, such as the Declaration of Independence and then the Constitution. And now we have a framework of social construct along with the Bill of Rights as to how we're going to be living within the frameworks of society. And by the time Rothschild Rockefeller established the General Education Board, we then would pattern our society after a corporate model or ideal. And with Henry Ford, it would be solidified what that would look like, even up until Pluto finally entered Aquarius, and here we are. Down goes Rothschild Rockefeller's ideal. So now that we're free, and it may sound a little ironic for me to say that, freedom does come by chaos. And if you don't know you're free, if you don't claim that you are free, you are not free. But I'm saying that you are free because it's something that has to be realized. This decentralization of government, it puts the ball back in our court as the people. How do we recall psychologically that there's a collective consciousness that we need to get on board with? How do we get back on the same rhythm, the common agreement, the same ideal toward a common goal in order to manifest welfare and security for ourselves collectively? How do we get back there? Getting back there psychologically, it's returning to those times prior to the arrival of settlers. We're going back to indigenous codes. Indigenous codes are matriarchal, not patriarchal. It is the settlers who brought patriarchal ideals to all nations of the earth. Other nations of the earth, indigenous, were matriarchal. Matriarchal being that it's not in reference to a queen. It's not in reference to a mother or woman. It's in reference to the Cancer principle of honoring, respecting, and even obeying the power, the wisdom, the oracle, the insight of our conscience. To have a conscience and to allow the conscience to rule what is law. The moral compass, the code of ethics informed by the moral compass that has become the cultural standard and basis of all indigenous people of the earth, but not so the settlers. We're returning to indigenous codes. No matter how hard they try to maintain the patriarchal norms, it will not stand, it will not last, it will not succeed, it will fall. The matriarchal law is the supreme law. It is the natural way. It is the origin from whence we all came. As Pluto goes direct, October 13th, you will notice that the moon will be conjunct Jupiter at that time. And this is significant. What it implies is giving context to the intention of Pluto's direct motion. In context of that intention, it is, we are finding what power means. We are finding what the collective conscience is to be, the collective mind. We are aligning with where we can feel the power collectively on the same page, where we have the ability to give effect and consequence if we should need to, where we can defend and protect ourselves if we need to, where we can create welfare and security for ourselves if we need to, and this apart from the from the monarchical and oligarchical rulership over us. It is a contemplation of that. And the moon is what holds the codes, the cosmic codes for what that should mean. And conjunct with Jupiter, it combines creativity, leadership, competence, wisdom, optimism, expansiveness, and cooperation. And in Cancer, it indicates a commitment in this course of Pluto to the matriarchal law, to the matriarchal outcome, to the matriarchal interests, to the matriarchal memory in all of us collectively. Jupiter is also the Lord of Sagittarius and Pisces. In Sagittarius, simultaneously, we have Juno picking up direction in Sagittarius. And this is about breaking free. This is about the exploration of what this decentralized reality is really going to be about. Taking chances, opening the mind, and counting every experience as valuable insight, wisdom, and greater knowing. Having acceptance for whatever the outcome or consequences will be for our exploration of what is possible for us from here. a journey into the wilderness. And this wilderness is, we don't know what to make of this. We don't know what to expect with the circumstances of our countries, plural. But we're willing to explore bravely, with enthusiasm, with free spirit, with zeal, of knowing that it's our time, it's our chance, it's our opportunity to finally figure out our world collectively and get on the same page. What's about to happen is the people are about to make their own war cry. What's about to happen is the psychological composition or disposition of the people collectively are going to get on the same page. That same page is going to be on the basis of Cancer, which is we all have the same needs in common. We all have the same insecurities, the same threat. We all have the same sensitivities and questions about what's around the corner. We all have need for food, clothing, and shelter, and to experience dignity. We all have the need to advocate for the weak and the meek in our community and households. We all have the need to have an answer, to know what we can expect tomorrow for our care, for our security, as solutions for the crisis that we're in. We're going to find that in Cancer, we all have ancestral identity that shares likeness. Through Cancer, we all have the same thing in common. Through Cancer, we all have the same grievances and complaints. Through Cancer, we all are suffering the same pains. And this is part of what's bringing the psychology to the same frequency through Aquarius collectively. And Aquarius indicates a forward motion, innovative ideals that gives progression and solutions, the water gourd that brings what is invaluable to the people as service, as wisdom, as ideas, as inventions, as concepts. And this is what starts the infrastructure of what we can expect tomorrow. We all are going to realize that no hero is coming for us. We all are going to realize that we are the savior who's coming. We are the hero that is coming. We are the hope that we have. We are the solution. If we can unify, if we can get on the same page. Pluto is where there have been very deep psychological impacts because of truth and evidence that brings contradiction to what we held as truth or what we accepted as truth and evidence. There's a contradiction. There's a contradiction to what you accepted as real and what actually is real. There's residue of cognitive dissonance that brings a great deal of discomfort, frustration, anger, resentment, a sense of rebellion and revenge, and realizing that someone lied to you, deceived you, tricked you, fooled you, or that you lied to yourself, tricked yourself, or fooled yourself. It's where there's a reality to accept that's very difficult to accept. You don't want it to be true. You don't want it to be real. You want what you want to be true, and you want what you want to be real. It's where a struggle is taking place to say, this is my reality. This is what has happened. This is what has manifest. This is my lot. This is my fate. This is the outcome. And it is painful to accept that that is the case. Disillusionment has arrived. We've had collectively to process disillusionment. Individually, we had to process disillusionment at the house placement of our Pluto. Great disillusionment. And that is, we are asked to align ourselves with what is true, not what you wanted or preferred to be true. We're being asked to align ourselves with what is evident, not with what was traditional for you, the story or the version that you were told, the idea that you had, what you got comfortable with saying or doing or idealizing or being. Truth and evidence has been recovered and brought back up to the surface. And it opposes the ideas and thoughts and beliefs that you have held. And the worst thing that we could do is try to hold on to and remain attached to past ideals of what we wanted to be true and real, instead of finding the resilience to practice acceptance with what we now know to be true and what we now know to be real. This is an intense reality collectively with the headlines, narratives, propaganda, news, media, headlines. There are many illusions in front of our face. And many of us are coming to find that narratives that were explained to us all of our life, stories that were told all of our life, explanations and interpretations that were repeated all of our life, the warm seat that we sit in and got comfortable in, all along it had one leg, it's just that we balanced pretty good on it, but now it falls that we're aware of it. There are a lot of truths to align with. And that's where the pain is at with Pluto. It's the fact that once you know the truth, you're obligated to the truth. You can't put it back in the bag. You cannot unsee it. You can't pretend like you didn't hear or know or see. You know the truth. Now what are you going to do? You've been shown. Now what are you going to do? Power struggles manifest, which is another theme of Pluto, when we attempt to change what is true, control the narrative, rewrite the narrative. When we attempt to change the unfolding of history as it actually has happened. You are fighting with the past, struggling with the past, and it is futile. You are wrestling with God and you will never win. Your arms are too short. How many of us have fought with something that is futile? And what it looks like is rage, madness, insanity. Literally the definition of insanity. Power struggles, a fight to the death, to be the one in control, the one in domination, the one with the last word. Attempts to make someone do what you want them to do, be who you want them to be, behave the way you want them to behave, think the way you want them to think. to be in control of what someone says or doesn't say and how they say it. We want control, obsession, domination when it comes to Pluto. And every time we come to the reality, there is nothing I can do about it. I must accept there are some things that I just cannot change. Acceptance. When we attempt, when in this futility, we attach ourselves to how we prefer the past to go. Or when we attach ourselves to sentiments and emotional attachments that truth has now come to dissolve, dispel, or bring an end to as an illusion, that's where the suffering comes in. We only suffer when there's attachment. We only suffer when we refuse to let go. When we refuse to let the end be the end. If it is the end, allow it to be the end. Let the end be the end. Because when you can let the end be the end, you also are allowing the beginning to be the beginning. You cannot permit the beginning until you permit the ending. Let it end if it is the end. And turn your head to the beginning right at that ending. Where there is an ending, there is a beginning. And it will always be that way. The ending is the beginning. Otherwise, we suffer because of the attachment to the past and the attachment to the inevitable and the power struggles that are futile to change what is already true and evident. Be merciful to yourself. Transformation comes often by seasons, and we have to accept when the season of transformation is here, because on the other side of it is empowerment. It is empowerment. Pluto direct motion, we still have Mercury in Scorpio at this time, passing through the last decan of Scorpio on the 13th. And by this time, Mercury is reading through the codes of the phoenix who rises from the ashes at the last decan of Scorpio. And this is to be able to name, to identify, to bring terminology to an explanation to what it's going to take to overcome those power struggles and matters of disillusionment, discontent, psychological torment, and overwhelm that has arrested us since May. The futile fights and battles and power struggles that have plagued us since May. Mercury now brings clarity to the way out, to the way up, and to the way to come back to life. The way by which we can resurrect ourselves and find forward motion out of those limitations of power. This is an agreement with what we are manifesting through Sagittarius Juno, which is I am dedicated to creating freedom for myself. It also is consistent to the new foundation that we have restored, re-identified with, brought ourselves back to as an origin, which is Cancer Jupiter expansion, the matriarchal realization of the essence of the self, born from the Divine Mother, Cancer. That is loyalty, consistency, truth, and alignment to our conscience, to our moral compass. No matter what chaos is going on in our life or in our world, no matter how confusing or lost we may seem, if we can come back to the oracle, which is our clear conscience, the moral commitment, the 42 laws of Ma'at, that is the basis, that is ground zero from whence we must build and create and express. From there, collectively, that is the basis. Individually, that is the basis. If we can come back to that core, we have a foundation of which to build upon, and we have the matriarchal value system that informs our patriarchal infrastructure that must protect and preserve its vulnerabilities. This Pluto direct is empowerment now, where you have felt disempowered since May. Let me ask you, what house is this for you? Where do you have Pluto in Aquarius? What house do you have Pluto in Aquarius? In that house, this is where your power has been limited. You felt disconnected from it. You felt disenfranchised. You felt like a system, an order, an infrastructure, a corporation, an industry, a society has left you outside of the agreement of power, of the allotment of power, and somewhere you found yourself on your own with it. This is where you were trying to figure it out. How do I empower myself since they won't empower me? How do I empower myself since I can't get empowered through this? Mercury is clarifying that in Scorpio. And with that clarification, there is boldness and fortitude with that. With Mars in the second decan of Scorpio, which actually is nostalgia. That is nostalgia. So Mars is drawing off of your memory that serves as an emotional motivation to prevail and succeed past this stuck position where your power has felt limited, where you have felt incapable, and where you have suffered in the discontentment of not being able to affect your circumstance and destiny in the way that you know your identity is claiming for you. It changes now that Pluto is going direct. October 13th, you will feel the empowerment because you will connect to the clarity that Mercury is bringing about your sense of empowerment. So it's good to reflect on the house issues that you've been facing concerning Pluto's retrograde since May. What have you been going through psychologically since May that has had you restless, up all night, wondering, thinking, reflecting, studying, getting advice on how you can empower yourself at this place of limitation in your life? You want to look into the house expression of Mercury in Scorpio. That is the area of your life where some clarity is going to come in. Some understanding is going to come in. Recognition of what details were missing is going to come in. Now, where's the gift? The gift in this is that there's a trine between Uranus and Pluto. Pluto and Uranus in Sedna. Pluto and Uranus conjunct Sedna and Gemini. This is the gift. Gemini, this is a territory of Mercury. And as I explained to you, Mercury is finding the details that helps us to manifest the phoenix expression towards our personal empowerment and psychological limitations. And we know that when we come to limitations in any power system of our body, death is how you begin new life. Understand, death is how you begin new life. And Mercury is finding and clarifying where death can begin a new life cycle for you. Mercury is the Lord of Gemini. And in Gemini, Uranus is supporting our ability to think outside of centralization, to think outside of institution organization, to think outside of the confines and traditional ideals of how we are to source our existence, of how we are to express our purpose, and of how we are to conceptualize the ideals of the self as a concept. How we are to find meaning beyond the dualities that seem to present contradictions in our life when it comes to fulfillment, meaning, purpose, and even happiness. Uranus helps us to think outside of those norms, unorthodox. Step outside of the rings of Saturn. Get decentralized in your thought process. Become a critical thinker. Independent in thought. Catch and download the revelation. The revelation will come through Gemini as we allow ourselves to be more receptive to information, appropriate data, and to do the due diligence and research, having the debates and conversations that sharpens our perspectives and balances our perspectives. And through the exercise of our intellectual capacity, we increase the probability of aligning ourselves with revelation or even realizing a moment of revelation, which is reflective. That helps with Pluto because it informs Pluto on where the possibilities are at. It informs Pluto on where to direct power at. How to align our psychology to withstand the inevitable en route and direction to the unlimited possibilities found and confirmed through Gemini-Uranus contemplation. Sedna is, this is about the depth of the psyche that's calling for a renewal of balance and alignment with the feminine matriarchal principle of life in this universe. In other words, what Sedna wants to do is realign us with an authentic positioning that is true to the matriarchal Cancer Jupiter expansion that's taking place right now. And at the time of this direct motion, we have the moon activating that Cancer Jupiter expression. And that's causing a greater realization of what that can mean. The feminine aspect of Sedna the destination of Setna's intention. It is Cancer, the matriarchal, the feminine source. And it's between humanity and nature. What inspires this, what her motive is to bring solution to sorrow, to pain, to grievances, to suffering. Sedna and Black Moon Lilith have a lot in common. It's about a restoration of the nature back to its original impulses prior to the judgment of right, wrong, good, or bad. And this automatically sets you outside of the rings of Saturn, where there's no patriarchal, conscientious objections upon the self or scrutiny upon the self that you identify with or that you accept as a judgment upon yourself. So it is to go deep within to your instincts to find and recover a sense of rebellion and a grit to fight for your right to exist as you are without shying away or hiding who you are anymore or apologizing for the space that you take up, and no longer begging or asking for your rightful place in this realm. Black Moon Lilith and Sedna have a lot in common because Sedna was thrown over by her father into the depth of the freezing cold, and this could have been, a Scorpio expression, and she found the grit, the boldness, the courage, the fierceness to restore her own self, to recover her own self. And we're finding that this theme is very relevant collectively to what's happening to the people. Our leadership has totally abandoned us and betrayed us. And you may have found that this is the case for you who has the illuminated heart in your relationship, at work, in your career, in society, groups and organizations that you may be a part of. Somewhere there's a sense of rejection and alienation. There's a sense of oppression and injustice that could have been inflicted upon you, and you find yourself having to fight for your right to be honored as you are in your natural and authentic state, and you shouldn't have to earn or beg to be given dignity. This has a lot to do with redefining, okay? Redefining what it's going to mean from here on out for me to have some dignity, some pride, some acceptance, security, stability, and a sense of belonging. This is more like, for example, a little puppy gets kicked out the house, being abused. They gave all the dog food to the other dogs and left this one outside. So this dog went off and ran off with the wolves in the deep woods, in the deep jungle. And he thought the dog was dead. So the dog comes back just like a wolf, and he devours, all little house puppies that was laughing at him for getting kicked out. You know what I mean? So it's one of those situations. I know all about this story. You know what I'm saying? And what I mean by I know all about this story is, I recall too many experiences like this, where I began to realize that being rejected, being the outsider, being the one who everybody, laughs at and puts on the outside, you ain't put me down like that. You only bringing me up because I know what's going to happen in the end. In the end, I'm going to be the wolf that eats you up. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be the wolf that eats you alive when I come back. So, I'll be right back. It's one of those. It's when somebody tell you, I'll be right back. And if you know anything about the streets, that's a dangerous statement to me. You know what I'm saying? You don't let nobody tell you, I'll be right back. That's That's a dangerous statement right there. I'll be right back. A word? That's what you saying? You know? Now you got to look over your shoulder because they will be right back, you know? And so it's on and popping. It's on site when they come back. It's one of those. So this is what the people's going to do. They're going to resort to, okay, I'll be right back. Black Moon Lilith notices in Scorpio too. Mars is in Scorpio. You know, this is not a joke. This is not a game. All that I mentioned of sorrow, pain, grievances, and suffering, this is currently being inflicted upon the people. And it's being inflicted upon the people by filthy rich individuals of a very small number. It's a small handful of people who are inflicting sorrow, pain, and misery upon the collective, the majority of the people, while lying to them, deceiving them, setting them against each other, making enemies out of them, watching them fight each other and tear each other down as they stuff their pockets. Sedna ain't having it. Sedna is pissed the fuck off about this shit. She is not okay with it. Is she ready to step a foot off in somebody's ass about the bullshit that's going on? So Sedna, in conjunction with Uranus, is ready for all the smoke. And she's working with Uranus in order to find innovative solutions that leaves behind the old infrastructure of abuse and tyranny, of control and oppression and patriarchy, in order to recover humanity into a promising direction that restores their sense of humanity, compassion, dignity, and care, founded upon the matriarchal principle. So, as I mentioned about Cancer Jupiter, it is Sedna who is working with Uranus in order to give us deliverance into that ideal. What does it look like to get deliverance into that matriarchal ideal? Deliverance is events and turning points manifest that are out of our power and control, that seamlessly causes favorable outcomes, that begins with an appearance of tragedy and misfortune. This can look like, for example, the collective right now. Many people have been laid off, 300 to 900,000 plus, government shutdown, unemployment. The price of groceries are just going up ridiculous. If you go buy a burger, or, you take your kids out somewhere, to eat, you're going to break the bank. If you call yourself dating right now, God help you. I feel sorry for people that's in that world, the world of dating. It's like you got to be rich these days to do that. The decision between putting gas in your vehicle and, paying your light bill. The people are in serious crisis. And it doesn't have to be that way, but there are greedy people that insist on it being that way. All right? I think we all know. We, the people, have been left outside. So, with all these events that are decentralizing us, it looks like tragedy. with all the things that these uh, monarchs and oligarchs are legislating and making decisions on, and they're speaking with a forked tongue and all these other things that are causing consequence to us. It may look like misfortune, it may look like trouble, but because Sedna is working with Uranus, what looks like misfortune and trouble could actually be the actual deliverance itself. Deliverance is not when we set ourselves free. Deliverance is when we are set free in our best interests, even while it is unwittingly clear to us that that is the case. And it always causes discomfort, cognitive dissonance. It manifests the tower moment, the tower card. It is a tower card event or a series of tower card events. So Sedna is going to operate through a series of tower card events. And these tower card events are going to push us into Sedna's ideal of matriarchal realignment that we, the collective, need to prevail the inevitables. Understand? Okay? Now, early in this recording, I could have made the mistake to say that Sedna's in a sextile, okay? If I did say sextile, what I mean to say is a trine, okay? That trine is the gift here, a grand trine, in fact, between Pluto, Uranus, and Venus at the time of the forward motion of, Pluto, okay? So what this is that Venus, Pluto, and Uranus are in agreement with a favorable course of action for you, a favorable course of action. Okay, so this trine is a smoothing out of events, and it opens opportunities that could include some of your gifts and talents that work very well and harmoniously for you, and also faded opportunities that seems to um, work seamlessly in order to give you the advantage or a forward direction, a forward motion. Okay, this is a time where you can feel like the parts are well oiled and the machine is running well, you know, because of that. And the fact that Pluto is starting out this way, you know, it's prophecy, it's foreseeing, it's foretelling, you know, that this is going to be a favorable transit for you overall, because the intention of it is meant to empower you. It is meant to empower you. So the season of disempowerment, you know, this is supposed to be the end of the season of disempowerment. So from here, you will begin to realize that you are in the course of direction for personal empowerment. Okay. The trine between Pluto and Uranus and Sedna, you know, it's facilitating for your realization of how you can restore your power and how you can feel empowered again. It's going to come from favorable outcomes or favorable opportunities at your Gemini first degree placement. You want to look at that at your natal chart, and that's going to have to do with you making innovative decisions and strategies that you've come to realize through revelation of Uranus, and also from opportunities of deliverance that Uranus has facilitated for you that you ought to take advantage of. Okay. And Sedna is also going to require some boldness, some grit, okay, clearing of the conscience and letting the chips fall where they may. You know, taking all the smoke, you might have to make a little mess. You know what I'm saying? You might have to call somebody, you know, to drop a few tears, you know, over your honesty and truth. Okay. You know, it is what it is. And then when we got the trine with Sedna and Venus, that is with Venus stepping into Libra, this is favorable also. And this means that it's going to be easy to harmonize those past themes that you were struggling to rectify and bring peace and solace to when Mars was transiting through Venus. Okay, now it's going to seem seamless, effortless, and easy. This also opens up your interest to get other people involved. It opens up your diplomacy so that you are masterful with your diplomacy, getting other talents and knowledge and experience, other people's, expertise and support and counsel involved in making favorable outcomes for yourself. Venus is very good at doing that. Also, Venus don't fuck around in Libra. You know what I'm saying? This is her territory. This is her court. So if there's any kind of injustice, if there's any kind of unfairness, if there's a tip of the balance of the scales, if things are not running harmoniously, Venus will get in that ass. You know what I'm saying? She's a warrior too at the same time. She will get in that ass. You know what I'm saying? So she might have a razor under her tongue. You know what I'm saying? In this situation, start slicing niggas. I ain't promoting violence, but you know what I'm talking about. In other words, what I'm saying is she gonna set the record straight. You know what I mean? So she's there to facilitate harmonious relations, diplomacy. You know what I'm saying? Getting along. Making sure that everything is cool, calm, collective, copacetic. You know what I'm saying? Ain't no smoke going on. And things can run well for you, so that at that Libra placement, you are finding it easier to deliver the I am, to deliver the Aries, to deliver the tip of the knife. Libra is the handle of the knife. Aries is the tip of the knife, okay? So that's a smooth rubber grip, you know what I'm saying, on that knife. So Venus is also in trine to Pluto, okay? So this means that you are bringing in supportive relationship connections that helps to ease your psychological disposition about what you've been going through. That gives you encouragement. You know what I'm saying? That gives you the balance and the harmonious inner workings of your situation that allows you psychologically to feel like you're formidable, you're resilient, you're capable, and everything's working in your favor to move forward and take advantage of every opportunity you have to make better dealings in your life. You know what I'm saying? And this is you at Aquarius, this is you looking at your place in the world as a free world, as a free opportunity that you get to decide your value, your worth in, because Venus does carry, your sense of desirability and value, and it's favorable to your psychology, which is your thoughts and feelings and your psychological disposition and attitude about yourself is you have finally accepted yourself. You feel good about yourself. You know what I mean? You feel like, you that nigga, you know what I'm saying? You on top of the world. You Django with the blue suit, you know what I'm saying? Riding into the sunset, when it comes to that. So, a lot of this has to do with the relationships that we have facilitated. It's in the air signs, you know what I'm saying? Aquarius, Gemini, Libra. So our communications is going to be everything in how this flows. The mastery of our communication now comes to service, and now comes to be opportunity in us going forward. Take notice also that we have Pallas Athena that's also working with Pluto. It's like flanking Pluto, you know what I mean? And it's catching, the influence of the trine, energy there, Pallas Athena. So Pallas Athena is facilitating Pluto with strategic insight, intuitive memory, and also a realization of patterns that gives you greater confidence in how you're going about planning things, and that allows you to use one bullet instead of 3 bullets, you know what I'm saying, for all of your efforts. You really feel like you're in control and command. So looking forward, this Pluto direction is a very good thing. It's a blessing, it's an opportunity, and this is where you finally get to feel psychologically like there's hope again, and like you don't have to choose to be powerless, and you don't have to look at your situation like this is all there is. There's no other opportunity, no other possibilities. What am I going to do? No, you are not trapped. You are not limited. You are not bound. And Pluto's about to show you that. You know what I'm saying? Really setting up is about to show you that. You know what I mean? And you're going to feel really relieved, and you're going to feel like you are empowered again. You know what I'm saying? And you don't have to just settle for the scraps. You don't have to just settle, for being in the back of the bus. You know, this is where you finally get up and you feel like you got plugged into the battery pack, finally again, after not having any juice, any power. you know, Here it goes. The blood is, flowing through your veins, and you feel valid again. You know what I mean? So this is good news that's coming in, and I'm happy that I can share the good news with you, let you know that it's good news coming. You know what I'm saying? So align yourself with it, get ready for it, and yo, listen, man. Let me tell you, all, or encourage you all to encourage somebody around you. You know, give somebody encouragement. If you see somebody with their head down, if you see somebody look like they worried or they scared, you know what I'm saying? You see somebody look like they stressed out, or they don't believe in themselves. If you catch somebody walking around look like they might have low self-esteem and don't believe in themselves, take advantage of that opportunity, to lift a little weight off that person's shoulder. Say something, you know what I'm saying? Let's just get in the habit of watering the people around us, you know, loving on the people around us, encouraging the people around us. Don't let anybody around you hold their head low. Don't let anybody around you lack in the belief that they should have in themselves. Don't let anybody around you lack in the faith that they should have. You know what I'm saying? In the confidence that they should have. There's plenty of people that, you know, are ready to beat somebody down, make them feel like they can't, make them feel like it's over. Speak life into people. Become somebody who speaks life into other people. That's what we need. You heard? So anyway, like, share, subscribe, all that. Show your support. Schedule for your natal birth chart reading if you would like to get into detail in depth about these things that I just went over.